What is going on out there, lacrosse fans and sports bettors alike? Maybe we're going to make some new lifelong lacrosse fans once you win some money here. The first episode, the debut edition of the Bet On Lacrosse Podcast. Man, am I excited. I'm your host, Dan Neubert. You can get me on Twitter at Newbie Talks. And with me, as always, the co-host with the most, Doug Greenberg. You can get him on Twitter at Doug Greenberg. Doug, it's been a long time coming. We had to talk about fantasy and the like to get here talking about what we love, the sports betting side of things. Doug, how are you doing, my man?
Newbie, I am so good, man. It is so good to be back. It is great to be talking lacrosse. It's great to be talking betting. And you know what? I think the inverse of what you just said, where we can get some lifelong lacrosse fans from bettors, I think we can get the inverse is true too. I think we can get a lot of lacrosse fans into betting, which, you know, sometimes a questionable decision, but, I think we can get a whole lot of them into betting. It's a wonderful world. It's, for anyone who's not really into betting, what the great Brent Musburger says about it is, don't go into this trying to make money. You're going into this because you want to make sports exciting for yourself. If you're smart and you're disciplined, you can make some money, but we're here to just have a good time, and maybe not for a long time, but we'll see.
I love it how he drops knowledge, saying inverse and converse and not the shoes in the opening of the show. But I completely agree.
This is highbrow stuff, man.
Yeah, always highbrow stuff. And that's the thing. I definitely agree. Well, the long-term goal is for us to make money, but we're going to have fun all along the way. And right at the top here at the Bet On Lacrosse Podcast, I want to remind folks, when you are gambling, make sure you're doing it responsibly. But we're going to have some fun here on the first episode of the Bet On Lacrosse Podcast. Also, behind the board, and you'll be hearing from him, probably pushing back on some of our hotter takes, Hutton Jackson. Behind the board, Hutton, you got to be excited too, man. We're finally here talking lacrosse betting, man. It's going to be a fun summer.
I am pumped. I'm pumped to have you guys running this show. I'm pumped to kind of be behind the scenes, and I'm pumped to have you guys pick some winners for me as well, hopefully this summer.
Well, the thing is, if only lacrosse was fun and exciting and we had back and forth games to talk about. Oh, wait. We're recording this fresh off of the NCAA Division I championship, where instant classic doesn't even scratch the surface on what we saw. So we're going to start by just breaking down that game that you were able to bet on college lacrosse come playoffs, which was just terrific. Following that, we're going to take a look at the PLL futures market. We're also going to go through all 5 games in week 1 of the PLL. Of course, we'll be sharing what we're looking at on the board. And then wrapping up the episode, we're going to debut our extra money opportunities segment. And we're also going to get you some best bets. So without any further ado, let's get right into it with the Division I championship that was just everything we could hope for and more. It was 2 powerhouses in Maryland and in Virginia. Virginia looking to go back to back. Maryland looking to stay undefeated. And I mean, just runs on runs. It was Maryland running away. Then UVA, the Wahoos putting their stamp on the game. It all ends up with some heart-pounding moments, 30 seconds of a game that will live in infamy. What an incredible game. And it shows right there, Doug, why we love this sport, because even when you're out of it, you're never out of it. And what an incredible game that was for lacrosse fans and just sports fans alike.
It was remarkable. And I'm hoping that some casual fans or even non-lacrosse fans tuned in, because that was just a real treat of a game. Came down to the last 10 seconds of the game. Virginia really put in a gutsy effort in that game. They dominated in possession most of the game. In a sense, they were really dominating in Maryland. All credit to them. They really made a run at the end. I thought the game was over with 5 minutes left. I was like, okay, Virginia has had a stranglehold on possession the entire game. Maryland, they got so unlucky. They hit a bunch of posts. Who was it? There was somebody had a one-handed shot that hit the goalie in the face. That was incredible. And then somehow they just strung together a couple goals right at the end. And that's the beauty of lacrosse, is it's never really over until it's over. And it was just such a remarkable game. And from a betting perspective, very, very interesting as well, because Virginia came in as slight dogs. They got a lot of Maryland got a ton of steam late in the game, or right before game time started. And, Virginia came through, especially if you grabbed them +1.5, that was probably some decent value, but especially if you grabbed them on the money line. I mean, all power to you. I can't say I was among them, but tough beat. And that's just, it's a inherently unpredictable game. So that's why we love it.
Well, I will say, and I know people don't want to just hear me bragging on the first episode, but when the tournament started, I placed 2 futures, one of which was on Maryland, one of which was on the Wahoos. So once the game time rolled around, it was all gravy for me. And it's funny because you were talking about, how everything was going over. Well, the game flew over. Depending on if you hit it when it opened at 21.5 was the over under, ticked up a little bit because so many people were playing the over. But that thing soared over, almost got doubled up. And just to go back before we get into some of the PLL futures here and get going in to the professional side of things, along the way for maybe some folks who are new to betting, we can explain some of these terms that you'll be hearing a lot on the podcast. Doug using one there, referring to a lot of steam. Essentially, what that means was people were looking at which team they thought were going to win the game, and majority of the betting public was betting on Maryland, meaning that they were getting steam, which caused them to be more expensive on the money line. When it opened up, all you had to lay was 125 on the money line for Maryland. By the time the game closed, at some shops, it was about 180 that you were laying there. So along the way, we can teach you a little bit about some of those terms as well. Hutton, before we get into these futures, I mean, what an incredible game that championship was. I was trying to get down here so I could get ready for this episode, and I couldn't leave my TV because they kept you strapped in, even with some 4-goal, 5-goal leads. Incredible stuff.
What a roller coaster. I mean, you got to give props to Alex Rode for standing on his head in cage to finish that game. It looked like Maryland could have tied it off the faceoff, and he ended up coming with a big save that ended up being the game winner. Yeah, back and forth, though. Crazy. I mean, I went out of my chair when Anthony DeMeo scored that long range goal to pull within 1. And I saw Nick Ocello's tweet that said, if only it was worth 2 points like it is in the pros. Obviously, host of Pro Lacrosse Talk here, I have to plug a little bit of the pro game because I love it so much. But what a game. I mean, it was just phenomenal back and forth. You never really felt like Maryland was completely out of it. Even when they started to get desperate towards the end of the fourth quarter, you still caught a glimpse of, okay, they have Jared Bernhardt. They have a high-powered offense. They could probably make some stops, get back in this game, and they did. Just unfortunately fell a little too short. It seemed like they just ran out of time at the end, but what a game to treat us lacrosse fans after, a year of absence of not having a championship. I think we were treated to a phenomenal one.
No, I couldn't agree more with either of you guys right there, which is just incredible that we go from off the heels of what an incredible championship run that was for UVA and what an incredible championship culmination it was. And a week after, we get to roll right into the PLL lacrosse season. And that's what we'll do right here. Why don't we start by taking a look at what has happened thus far? Because as far as, as soon as about, 2, 3, probably a little bit over a month ago, you've been able to bet on the PLL futures. And what it looks like right now, really not much has changed outside of maybe some plus prices changing. I think the biggest thing that stands out to me, guys, is when all these lines open on the PLL futures, you could get the Cannons at plus 2,000. I mean, that's got to be a fun ticket to get on early. I wasn't as confident to pull on that. It went down below 900, and now it's up just about at plus 1,000. So, the thing is, when I'm betting futures, Doug, I like there to be a juicy payout. Like, sure, I would love to go on the Whip Snakes to 3-peat, but I'm not going to do it at plus 160. And with the Archers, sure, I think they have a lot of great pieces. They have one of the best 1-2 punches in the league in Schreiber and Amon that, I'll get to in just a little bit here. But at plus 450, I don't know if their price or the Redwoods is enough to get money out of my pocket at those prices. But I'm just wondering for you, like when you look at futures, how do you bet them? And was there anything that you saw on the PLL side of things that really kind of got you interested, maybe worth a look?
Yeah, this one's tricky because this is another great Brent Musburgerism. It's all about picking the winners. You're just trying to cash tickets. That's what you're going for at the end of the day. And even with futures, futures, you're going with some value here. And just the way that things are set up in this league, the way that this team in particular has constructed themselves, it's so hard to pick against Whip Snakes. Like it really, really is because, they're the back-to-back champions. And frankly, they did not get a whole lot worse, if at all, this offseason, even with, an expansion draft. It's so hard to pick against whip snakes. That said, if you grabbed that Cannons at 20-1, just threw like literally just a couple of bucks on that, that's a great bet just from a value perspective. And then from there, we can see some of the teams that have caught some of the steam, as we were talking about earlier. Archers obviously have moved up a little bit from 500 to 450. I think I personally love Archers this year. I think that the way that they're constructed, they did a really nice job in the offseason. I think getting Connor Fields was such a great move for them. That offense is going to be super high powered. So I like them a lot. And then another team that's very interesting that's caught a lot of steam in the futures market is Water Dogs. Water Dogs opened up at 9-1 and now we're 7-1. And honestly, it's another team that's made a lot of great moves in the offseason. They already had some decent pieces there, despite being an expansion team last year. But if you're really looking for some value down the board, it might be a little bit too late too late from the Cannons because they've, their value's been cut in half.
Yep.
But Water Dogs just moving down, 2 orders of magnitude or whatever you want to call it. I think they're still a decent bet at 7-1 if that's one you're looking at here. But again, it's just so difficult to bet against whip snakes right now. They're so dominant, and until we see them not be dominant, it's just very difficult to pick against them.
Yeah, and I think too, in between Water Dogs going up and then going down, they went all the way up as high plus 1,100. So you just see how fluid these kind of future markets are, and why really you just kind of have to keep going back and checking them, because sometimes you'll just see this incredible plus price that's just a little bit too juicy, so to speak, to be able to turn up. But I'll be the first to drop the hot takes, guys. Even at plus 450, while I hate having the book holding on to my money for just, a 4.5 to 1 payout, that's going to be my pick to win it this year. I think that they were right there, 1 goal loss to the Whip Snakes last year in the semis. And I'll get to this a little bit later, but the real part that they were missing was something at the stripe, was at that face-off X. And, they've definitely answered that with the player that we talked a lot about on the Fantasy Lacrosse podcast in TD Erlin. So I'll be the first one to throw out a hot take here on the Bet on Lacrosse podcast. Give me the Redwoods plus 450 to win the championship. And if that continues to trend that way, I'm going to get more and more annoying as the year goes on, Doug.
I don't hate that pick at all. Because they, like you said, they've been right there. They were in the finals 2 years ago. They were in the semifinals, got very close to winning in the semifinals last year. It's not a bad play, and they are one of the most talented teams in the league, no question. And like you just mentioned, they filled in one of their only weaknesses, which was at the face-off stripe with arguably the best face-off guy in college lacrosse this past year, probably not even arguably. TD Erlin, dude is amazing. I definitely like that play a lot, but again, what we keep talking about with line movement as well, you might be able to get some better value on Redwoods. It just depends how you think like the first week or two is going to go. Redwoods is one of the only teams, Redwoods and Cannons are both playing 2 games, right? In the first week. So if you think that Redwoods is going to lose one, maybe both of those games, then maybe you wait, see if Redwoods, their line gets a little longer, and then you grab it, because then you get a little bit better value on that pick. But I definitely see what you're saying. But it'll depend kind of just how you think they're going to do in the early goings. But it's definitely a really nice pick in terms of some value.
That's why we have Dougie Fresh, Doug Greenberg on the pod here. Analysis, you can only hear from that guy right there. So I don't really have much, guys, on the player future side of things. I'm all about value when you're betting futures. I kind of alluded to it there. I hate having the book hold on to my money for a whole entire season, because then that's not money I can be using if you're managing your bankroll correctly to be betting on some of these teams in season. So as far as, the MVP futures, they have top goal scorers, 2-point scores. You can really find some fun bets for season long. Just the way and my betting strategy, I really don't delve much into the future market unless I have a real strong feeling. So either Doug, Hutton, any strong feelings on the MVP winner or some of these other player prop futures before we get into the action coming this Friday in PLL as week 1 rolls around?
Yeah. So, just looking at it right now, it's the MVP ones. It's really just so hard to say. Obviously, we think Lyle's the favorite, rightfully so. And then you got Rambo, the MVP from 2 years ago. I believe Zed. I mean, obviously it was weird because of the bubble tournament, but Zed's the reigning MVP there. And interestingly, he's only at 10-1 right now. So the idea is that maybe he won't be able to keep it up over an entire full season. I don't know, man. Zed's really, really good. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the top goal scorer conversation as well. He's the second favorite there at plus 250. The one value play that I definitely liked looking at this is the 2-point scorer, right? So there's the two favorites at the top. We got Sergio Perkovic and Mike Chanenchuk, plus 175, plus 325, respectively. Makes sense. They've been two of the, probably the two best 2-pointer guys in the league up to this point. However, there is one rookie coming in this year, and there was a tweet from our guy Joe Keegan, which I can't find for whatever reason, but I know I saw it, where he was at practice and he saw Mac O'Keefe has got some serious range apparently. He was one of the deadliest scorers in college lacrosse, and he's tied for the third best odds, but those odds are at 12-1 compared to where Perk and Channy are at. And that's really, really interesting to me, because I think the only reason he's at 12-1 is because he's an unknown commodity. And sometimes you can make some serious dough on that. Guys who you don't know, like, and that's another one too. I don't think we have rookie of the year odds or anything like that, but rookie, like in other sports, being able to like spot something in a rookie of the year campaign, for example, in the NHL, I didn't end up taking this and I'll be kicking myself for the rest of my life about this. Kirill Kaprizov from the Minnesota Wild, you could find a serious edge on that dude. He was like the fourth or fifth best odds for rookie of the year in the NHL. And there were so many indications that he was easily going to win it this year. It hasn't been announced, but he's pretty much a lock for it at this point, because he was a dominant player in the KHL. And so he's had that experience. And so if you can spot an edge with a guy like Mac O'Keefe, who was one of the best scorers in the history of college lacrosse, and we're getting a lot of early indications that he's got some range, and we don't know exactly what he can do from 2-pointers at this point, because there is no 2-point line in college lacrosse. So I love Mac O'Keefe at 12-1 for most 2-point goals. I think it's a really, really good value play. And especially if you don't want to go with a known commodity like Perkovic or Chanenchuk. That's the only player future I really feel a little strongly about. I'll probably end up throwing something in on that before the fun gets underway. So that's the only thing I'm looking at.
Now, full disclosure, I record from Pennsylvania, a little bit outside of Philadelphia. They do have a saying about Mac O'Keefe there at Happy Valley at Penn State, and it is simply,
he's good.
Yeah, it's always a good look, and it's fun when you're rolling with O'Keefe. Before we get into some of these games this week, I know, Hutton, when we were talking our little pre-show meeting, it sounded like you had some thoughts, at least on this future market for some of these players. Any thoughts behind the board there, brother?
Yeah, I love, the idea of Mac O'Keefe, having a chance. Obviously, we've seen him shoot from 2-point range in college, despite it only counting for one. So he's more than capable. I also like Kirst as well. He's at plus 2,000 is another opportunity. Again, he's going up against Mike Chanenchuk on his team. So it might be tough for him, to get all those opportunities as well. But especially with Mac O'Keefe being probably going to be running out of the box a lot because of that attack. I mean, the thing with the Chaos, they don't really play attack and middies. It's more lefty offensive guys, righty offensive guys. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for him. So I really like that. In general, with the player futures, I think it's just tough because the odds are so stacked against you. And it's almost like, the two obvious picks would be Lyle Thompson, Matt Rambo, and Tom Schreiber, but they're the least value you could get. And then everything else is kind of a risk, especially too, when you're looking at teams where, you could look at, if you think a Cannon could potentially win MVP, well, you got to remember, like, it's probably going to be Lyle Thompson if there's anybody. And that's kind of how I feel with a lot of the teams. And again, the MVP thing is it's tough. I mean, Zach Curry is another guy who could be on the Water Dogs, be an MVP caliber player, but it's just hard. It's hard to pick these player futures.
Man, see, that's why we pull him in. Even if he wants to hide behind the board and just produce the show, we're going to have to keep getting Hutton takes because they're so strong, just like that. So folks, we know you came for the meat and potatoes. Believe it or not, this week, the PLL already starts. Friday night, we will be talking about professional lacrosse being back, and we'll be talking about us betting on it. So I'm going to turn it over to Hutton, and he'll break down, or at least send us into the games we'll be breaking down. We'll be giving you our thoughts on the totals, some spread plays as well, and you'll want to stick around to the end of the episode when we give you our best bets and our extra money opportunities. But Hutton, take it away, my man.
Yeah, so you have Redwoods Cannons starting it off 7 p.m. on Friday night. Redwoods are 1.5 point favorites, and the over-under on that is 22.5 goals. On Saturday, you're getting the Chaos and the Whip Snakes. The Whip Snakes are 2.5 point favorites. Obviously, they are the reigning champs, and they beat the Chaos en route to their second championship last year. So that's going to be a rematch from last year's championship. Later that night, Atlas play Archers. New look Atlas team. Archers are open up as 1.5 point favorites against the Atlas. And then the following day on Sunday, you have Cannons playing their second game against the Water Dogs. Water Dogs are 1.5 point favorites. The over-under for that is 21.5. And then Redwoods playing the Chrome for the final game of the weekend. That one's a little bit higher over-under. The over-under is 24.5. So that might be a good game to look at into potentially, if you're looking to play the over-under, the totals. And the Redwoods are 1.5 point favorites, again, in that game.
Yeah, excellent stuff there. And that's the thing, you run down right there and you notice the highest total that you're looking at is Atlas and Archers. A lot of respect for both of those offenses. Probably the Archers in that case, maybe just a little bit more, with Jeff Teat still having that major question mark over when we'll actually get to see him, if at all, on the field this year. 25.5, as Hutton mentioned there. The lowest we're looking at in the total market is the Cannons and the Water Dogs, which is 21.5, and that under is even juiced a little bit more. You have to pay a little bit more to play the under at -134. All the games basically lined like you would see a baseball line or a hockey line, that 1.5. They call it the run line or the puck line. But then you have the one game that stands out to me with the Chaos and the Whip Snakes at +2.5. So we'll go game by game here, and I'll let you bat leadoff for us as we look at the Redwoods -1.5 point favorites over the Cannons to kick off the PLL season. Anything you're looking at here, Dougie?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great game to open it up. I completely understand why the PLL wanted to lead off with this game, because Redwoods is kind of that, the perennial bridesmaid. As we were talking about, one of those teams they're always just right there, but they can't ever quite get past Whip Snakes. You don't necessarily want to open the season with Whip Snakes, though. That's something that the NFL does every year. I think it actually would have been kind of cool, but I understand not wanting to do Whip Snakes in the first game of the year against Cannons. Seems to set Cannons up for failure immediately. So I like this idea of doing Cannons against Redwoods. As we were saying, like, Cannons are just they're a completely unknown commodity right now. Obviously, there's some things to love with them. There are some things to, be a little concerned about. But like we were saying, Redwoods they're such a good quality team. And I just can't see them, dropping a game right off the bat to an expansion team, even if that team has Lyle Thompson on it. If I'm looking at the spread, the -1.5 here actually looks really, really nice for Cannons, for Redwoods. You're getting even money for that, as opposed to the money line where you'd have to be laying -167. I wouldn't feel great about that. Seems like a lot to lay for, like we said, a little bit of an unknown commodity. But if you did want to get involved in this game, I think there's a decent shot that Redwoods, come out really strong, especially if, TD Ierlan is as good as advertised. But, great game to open up in Boston with the Cannon, or in Foxborough, I guess, with the Cannons back home there. But I'm definitely liking Redwoods on the spread here, -1.5.
Now, Hutton, any feel on this game? And then I'll kind of wrap it up before we move on into the next one. Do you have a pick against the spread in this one, Hutton?
I do. I'm with Doug on this one. I like the Redwoods, to cover the 1.5, -1.5, because I just think Cannons, there's just too many questions. Again, they have Lyle Thompson. They're always going to have a shot, but the face-off stripe is kind of a question mark for me. Again, we're led to believe TD will be their starting face-off guy for the Redwoods, and he'll be going up against either Simoneau or Kelly, or a combination of the two. And both those guys had, Kelly had a rough season last year, and Simoneau was kind of in a two face-off system. So, those guys I think might struggle a little bit against TD. And just with this high-powered Redwoods offense, led by Rob Pennell now, I just think it's too much to ask for the Cannons to cover that spread.
Well, you know what? We'll get our first disagreement. I will book you guys on this one. I'm going to take the Cannons plus 1.5. And again, folks, when we're making our picks against the spread, unless we're really explicitly saying, this is something I would be betting or this is something that I really like, this is obviously just for, some breakdown, some analysis on the game. I completely agree with everything you guys are saying, that the Cannons are a massive question mark. I mean, the talent is indisputable if you look at the roster, except as Hutton eloquently put there, at the faceoff stripe, I have some major concerns for this team for both lines. They have two guys that they're kind of going to be interchanging, and hopefully one guy's able to seize the role, but they'll have one heck of a tough test to start it off, but they get to do it in Gillette. They get to do it with all this excitement. And sure, the cool thing about the PLL is they travel from city to city. But I have friends up in that area that are so excited that they're going to get to see the Cannons in the PLL. I think there's going to be a lot of excitement around them. We've also seen in the past couple seasons that the Redwoods, they can have a tendency to start a little bit slow and really come on late. Now, I'm not saying that will happen, but in week one, opening night, who doesn't want to have a fun time? I'm going to take the Cannons plus 1.5 in this one, and I'm going with my first dog. A lot of my looks as we roll down here, guys, are going to be looking towards the dog, just because in week one, I just think there's such question marks. Like honestly, there's not many games that I'll be betting with my own money in week one, because I just kind of want to sit back. I want to see how some of these teams look, some of the chemistry. And then come week 2, week 3 is where I'm going to really start ramping up and really expending my bankroll. But, why not play on the dog in the first game of the season, have a little fun. And then you and I can all, be talking shit back and forth as the games are going on. It'll be a fun time.
Yeah, man. And honestly, I completely agree with you there. The last time we saw PLL, they were in the bubble. It was a very unique environment. They were playing lots of games in a short period of time. And now we've got an expansion. We got an expansion team. We have a new league merging in here. There's just so many question marks. And I think, I'm going to bet probably on one or two things here in week one, but I'm not going to go completely crazy with it. I'm just going to use this week to evaluate how everything goes. And then from there, we'll kind of see, I think week 2, we'll have a better feel of like what this is actually going to look like. But yeah, it's a good point. You don't want to go too crazy right off the bat. And, especially you don't want to blow all your money right off the bat. Don't want to destroy that bankroll. So, definitely something to keep in mind with this first week of games. We can evaluate it all we want, but really, we might be completely wrong. Would not be surprised if for some of these games we are totally wrong and we're totally off base. Like there's just nothing you can't take everything into account. So definitely something to pay attention to.
My biggest advice for you prospective bettors is even your best bet, even the most confident lock you've ever seen, is going to lose 50% of the time. Don't be crazy. Don't be pulling off the rubber band and betting with money that you can't lose, because even your most confident play is going to lose, folks. It's just going to happen. There's a reason why those lights are always on at these sports books. That's the exact reason there. So let's keep on moving here as we got the Chaos and the Whip Snakes kicking off Saturday. Going to be one heck of a game. The rematch we've all been waiting for. And the Whip Snakes getting the most favoritism on the spread, which comes as no surprise, as we kind of alluded to there. But both lines, both ways, minus 113. But you're looking at 2.5 goal favorites are the Whip Snakes over the Chaos. My best bet actually comes in this game, so I'm going to hold off. You guys are going to have to stick around for old Newbie Talk's take on this one. But Doug, 2.5-point favorites with an over-under of 22.5, 5 o'clock on Saturday on the eastern side of things. What are you thinking, brother?
You know what? If this was like Whip Snakes against Atlas, or it was against, I don't know, Water Dogs maybe, or Chrome, or a team like that, or Cannons, obviously, I would understand the 2.5-point line. That would make a little more sense to me. But against Chaos, who they played against in the championship game, granted, they beat them by more than 2.5 in the championship game, but I just don't think that's enough of a reason to make this a 2.5-point line. I think that, and I mean, another reason I could see why the bookmakers would think about this too is that, Chaos were god awful at the beginning of the season in the bubble. And really, when you look back on it, that was more of Andy Towers trying to get low seeding and that's the thing with Andy Towers is he's always going to be doing something a little tricksy. He's always got something up his sleeve. And I don't know. I don't think that Chaos want to really get embarrassed by whip snakes again. I don't know. Something feels really weird about that. Like I get it. Like the books are, and this is another one of those betting axioms, is that the books know what they're doing. You know, they're trying to entice people with this bet. And I don't know though. Something just feels so wrong about this. And granted, you know, betting in lacrosse is really new to the books as well. So maybe they're trying to feel out what works and what doesn't. I don't know. I don't think Chaos is, you know, poor enough to justify this line. They've still got so much talent. I'm a big fan of Josh Byrne. I think Josh Byrne's going to come out smoking in this one. You know, they've improved in the midfield. You know, if I had to go with anything, and again, I don't think I'm going to bet in this game in particular, but Chaos plus 2.5 is definitely something I'm looking for.
No, I think fair look right there. And honestly, full disclosure, I love head coach Andy Towers. He's like the best brand of Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's like exactly what lacrosse needs. Hutton, any thoughts that you have as the Chaos are taking on the Whip Snakes, and Doug's looking towards the underdog in this one?
Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. If you had to hold my feet to the fire, I'd probably go Whips still, you know, to cover.
Really?
But you got to look at both these teams, you know, have undergone some changes. Last year, the Chaos essentially beat them for 3 quarters and couldn't put it together in the 4th quarter.
Fair.
I like Doug's bet just because the fact that you're now having Max Adler, which was the face-off position, was such a struggle for the Chaos last year, being their, you know, presumed face-off man. And he trains with Nardella all the time. They're both members of the face-off factory. I think it's going to be a battle at the stripe between those two. So that's why I think there's just so much unpredictability. You could see the Chaos cover and beat them pretty soundly. That you could see the Chaos lose and still cover. You could see the Whips running away with it. I just wouldn't touch it. So I tend to like where Doug's head is at, just because, you know, they are given 2.5 points there. But again, I wouldn't touch this game if it was up to me.
And that's smart. You know, like this is a great teaching point for some folks who are new to betting, who are new to lacrosse. You know, if you don't have a strong feeling, just because a game's on TV doesn't mean you have to have action on it, folks. And I think that's one of the best lessons you can have as a bettor. You know, maybe if you have something that you kind of like, but you don't love, make a little note, write it down, see what would have happened. And sure, maybe you'll be kicking yourself, but maybe by the end of the week, you'll be thanking yourself passing on some of maybe these more subpar opportunities. We'll move on here to 7:45 Eastern on Saturday evening when the Atlas take on the Archers. Archers are a minus 1.5 point favorite. We're looking at an over 25.5 over under. Atlas are underdogs on the money line plus 145. You got to lay 186 to play on the Archers here. I know Doug from talking, he has a best bet look in this one. So we'll hold on to Dougie Fresh's thoughts, and I'll bat lead off here before I throw it back your way, Hutton. This is one of the rare looks I have towards the favorite. I'm taking the Archers minus 1.5 in this game. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm really excited for the Atlas. When those futures came out, I wanted to rush to put it on, hook 'em horns, whatever their slogan's going to be. I love the logo. I love how they have the whole vibe there. I'm really excited for the Atlas. However, I'm a little less excited when you have the giant question mark over Jeff Teat, who I was so pumped up when he went first overall. I think people have forgotten what a terrific player that this guy is because Cornell wasn't in action in this past NCAA season. It worries me a little bit, and they still have plenty of talent. Don't get me wrong. While on the other sideline, I mentioned it in the show open, you have one of the best 1-2 punches in lacrosse in Tom Schreiber and Grant Amon that has all kinds of chemistry. I think probably a little bit easier for them to get up to speed with the continuity that they already have on that Archers sideline, because guys, for all of these games, and why I'm saying hold off a little bit here in week 1, they've only been together for a week. Doesn't matter if they played 2 seasons, you know, if they're going into their 3rd season, if they're a rookie, they've only gotten to camp a week ago at Gillette Stadium. So I think in a lot of these, and, you know, I kind of speak out of turn when you'll get to my best bet, though. I think a lot of these teams that already have established continuity, they have a better chance week 1 at maybe pulling away, maybe making this a little bit tougher, which is why I look at the Archers minus 1.5 in this game. What say you, Hut?
I tend to agree. And, you know, looking on the other side of the field, the Archers revamped that defense that now features Graham Hosick, as well as Warren Jeffrey, you know, 2 physical presences at the defensive side of the ball. And then you also have Jared Connors they're adding at LSM, who we just saw in this UVA championship. So I think they're going to be a tough test for the Atlas. I think the Atlas have a lot of talent on offense coming in that wasn't there last year, and their defense is going to be a little bit better too, but too little time to kind of gel. And so I tend to agree with you with the fact that I like the Archers as 1.5 point favorites here.
So we'll get Doug's take a little bit later when we get to our best bet segment, which brings us, folks, to Sunday. Can't believe we're already talking about the last 2 games of the weekend, but we have plenty of fun coming this season, folks, as on Sunday, first game that we're looking at is the Cannons back in action again and staying as dogs on the spread, 1.5 point underdogs to the Water Dogs, who are 1.5 point favorites. We're looking at a 21.5 over under, and Water Dogs also favorites on the spread or on the money line, while there's no plus money to be had on the money line. As we look at our odds here, we're recording on a Monday. These, again, folks, may be moving at some point during the week, so you want to get to them as quickly as you can when you hear our episode drop. But 121 on the money line to the 106, both of them laying money on the money line. I'm staying away from both of those opportunities because of that. But Dougie, we haven't heard from you in a while, brother. I'll let you bat lead off here. As the dogs are not dogs against the Cannons, your thoughts, brother?
Dogs are not dogs. That's a line.
Pretty good.
Anytime the Water Dogs are favorite this year, that's something we're gonna have to pull off.
Yes, sir.
I don't think I'm going to put any real money on any games involving the Cannons this week, just because we really don't know what we're working with them. It's an entirely new team. And obviously they're going up against the other expansion team from last year, but we have a little bit better idea of how that team's going to function a little bit. I'm really excited about the kind of moves that Water Dogs made in the offseason. I think they're much improved. I definitely, I really like what they've got going on. And I think that, again, if I had to do anything for this game, I'm always going to pick against an expansion, against the newer expansion team, pardon me there. So I'd probably be looking at Water Dogs -1.5, but realistically, if I'm going to take it, it would probably be on the money line -121 for the Water Dogs. I'm willing to lay usually up to about 150. That's me personally. You got to, do what's most comfortable for you. And a 121, that's very reasonable for me. So I think just to not have to sweat out that extra point, having them win by 2, I'd rather just take Water Dogs -121.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of great points, and this is one that I'm not playing as well. If I had to, I would go with the Water Dogs -1.5 for one reason and one reason only. What helped me decide where I was kind of going on my picks against the spread here was some of these prices that you have to lay. That's one of the things when they line it as if it was a run line or puck line, you can get just some insane juice that you have to lay, some insane money that you have to lay to be playing something on the spread, which is the point of betting on the spread, is so you can get away from some of that heavy money line juice. So you put in a perfect opportunity where it's the exact opposite, because sure, do I think the Cannons can cover and win this game outright? Yeah, but I'm not going to lay -230 to do it. Now, for what it's worth, the Water Dogs, as Doug alluded to, they came on late in their last year, in their first year in the PLL, and they kind of know what the Cannons are kind of going to be going through this season as being the new kid on the block, the new expansion team. Cannons have to get up to speed rather quickly. I don't love this one either way, but that +175 on the Water Dogs to cover that spread would make me feel a little bit better about it if I did hold my nose and bet it, which I don't think I'm going to. Any strong opinion or feels in this game, Hutton, before we get to our last game of the spread or of the board this weekend?
No, I tend to agree with you. I do like the +175 because I do think the Water Dogs will win, and I think it will be, more than 2 or 3 goals. I think again, I'm not too high on the Cannons right off the bat, and I love what the Water Dogs did this offseason. I'm looking a little bit more too, though, at the totals. I think 21.5 is kind of teasing you to try to take that over. I would take that over in this game just because I think, Jake Withers did really well at the stripe last year, but he also had Semino with him. I think this face-off battle might be a little bit more up in the air comparatively to what the Cannons are going to face on Friday night. So I think you could see a lot of possession changes and hence a lot of scoring in this game. So I would take the over probably on this. You're getting it at +105 as well. So that's probably where I would look. I would maybe avoid picking a favorite in this, but maybe go towards the total.
Beautiful stuff there. And final game faces off 3:45 on Sunday afternoon, and then week 1 is done already. It's the Redwoods taking on the Chrome, and the Rollwoods are minus 1.5 point favorites over the Chrome. You're looking at a 24.5 over under, and money line very similar, actually the exact same money line that we just talked about. The favorite minus 121, and the Chrome, the underdog, at minus 106. I'll bat lead off on this one, guys. I'm high on the Woods. I mean, you heard it at the top of the episode. I was Mr. Hot Take starting off the episode, which is how we want to do it here. I was also and am also very high on the Chrome's defense, which I think clearly was a focus for them when you look at their roster and their draft especially. And both of these teams have pretty darn good defenses, major focus on that. So I'm looking at the under in this one with a little bit higher of a total at 24.5. That's probably my favorite play out of this one. But I also, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit later as well, I can't justify, laying minus 245 for the Chrome to cover 1.5. I mean, that's absurd to me. I would get that a little bit more if it was like a 2.5. Okay, lay that juice. It makes a little bit more sense, but I can't talk myself into that, which turns me to the Woods at minus 1.5. I could see, this kind of battle at the stripe being one of the funnest ones of the weekend with Farrell and TD Erlin. I can't wait for this game to tip off or, face off, so to speak. But with the Woods getting that plus 185, if you play them on the spread, that's the only look outside of the over, which I may be betting with my own money, or the under, which I may be betting with my own money. What say you, Doug?
Yeah, so this one's really interesting to me because just going off of where the spreads are at and where the odds are at for this game, this is actually the tightest game of the week. Because you look at that minus 1.5 spread line, or goal line, whatever you want to call it. That's plus 185 for the Redwoods. That's the longest odds you're going to get all day, or all weekend. And so this is the tightest line, and this is one of those lines where I look at it, it's what you might call a rat line in betting, where Redwoods are supposedly a much more superior team. Chrome, have not had ample success in their first 2 years in PLL. And yet this is the tightest line that we're seeing all weekend. And that makes me think, okay, Vegas, the books in this case, I don't know how involved Vegas is in this, but whatever it is, the books are looking at this and being like, okay, we know that people are going to love Redwoods. We know that they're a favorite for the championship. We know that Chrome has not had as much success. So let's make them favorites to acknowledge that they are the favorites in this game. However, we're going to give people a good chance with them on this money to entice them to bet on them. And a lot of novice bettors will look at this and be like, oh my God, Redwoods, like getting plus 185 on that spread line. You're getting minus 121 on the money line. That's unbelievable. I need to take them. And I don't know. I mean, Chrome has really improved this offseason. They've always been a really good team that just couldn't really figure it out. I really, really enjoyed what they have here. They did a really nice job in the draft. If I'm not mistaken, obviously picking up Randy Stotts in the entry draft was really, really good for them. I think getting JT Giles Harris, arguably the best defenseman in the draft, Ryan Terrapins, they have completely revamped that defense. So I'm going to have to go ahead and disagree with you. I would take Chrome, but like you mentioned, I can't possibly take them plus 1.5, minus 245. So I'd be looking at them on the money line here, minus 106. It's one of those plays that I actually really, really like. It's not my best bet, but I do really like it a lot. Chrome minus 106.
I love it. And Hutton, you're going to get the last word here before we step aside, give folks our best bet and our EMO extra money opportunities. What do you think of our breakdown there of our final game of week 1?
I tend to agree, kind of with Doug. I like the Chrome in this game, but again, I'm not going to do plus 245. It just doesn't make sense for me to put that much money towards it to try to make a little bit. So I would probably just do the money line and pick Chrome, because I do think I'm pretty high on the Chrome. I thought they had a really good season trending upward last year as well. They just kind of ran to a hot chaos team out of nowhere. Last year they beat the Redwoods by 1. So again, that's like a really tough game for me to even touch. So if I had to pick, I'd probably go Chrome money line, but again, probably staying a large distance away from this game.
Man, so folks, when I fade the Redwoods earlier with the Cannons, I get disagreement. When I roll with the Woods here, I get disagreement. I can't win with these two guys. We're going to step aside. We're going to hear from our sponsors when we get back. It's money-making time. We're going to be giving you our best bets and our extra money opportunities. Don't go anywhere, folks. Thank you for listening to Bet On Lacrosse on the Lacrosse Playground Podcast Network. Bet On Lacrosse is hosted on the podcast platform Anchor, and Anchor gives you everything you need to produce your own podcast, and the best part, it's free. They allow you to easily record and edit your podcast, and after it's published, they send it out to all the major networks like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many more. They also connect you directly with advertisers so you can start making money from your podcast right away. If you're thinking about starting a podcast today, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome on back to the maiden voyage, folks. We're almost out of time here on Bet on Lacrosse Episode 1. I'm your host, Dan Neubert, at Newbie Talks. With me, the co-host with the most, Doug Greenberg. Get him on Twitter, at Doug Greenberg. This is where everybody has been waiting for. It's best bet time, and let's get into it. Oh, yeah. Oh, Tina Turner kicking off the segment. It's all about the production value here, folks. We got to keep you around for a reason. Best bet time. Doug, the floor is yours, my man.
All right, man. I'm going with Archers -1.5 against Atlas. Atlas made some nice moves in the offseason. I'm still not completely convinced by them. I think if there is such a thing as rebuilding in PLL, I think Atlas is probably the closest thing to that. Whereas Archers, I think, are in win now mode. I think they're really trying to prove that they're up there, especially, having Tom Schreiber, one of the best players in the league. I think they're out here with something to prove this week against an Atlas team, which I'm just not completely convinced by. I'm not crazy about laying 1.5, but I think in this game, it's about as good a bet as you can find. So I am looking at, for my best bet, Archers -1.5, -113. What say you, newbie?
I say you're simply the best, Doug. That's what I say. My best bet is Chaos +2.5, -113. I hear these guys groaning already. Chaos, they've spent all year, folks, thinking about that run that they had only to come up short against the Whip Snakes. You don't think that adds a little bit of an edge to a team? I know it adds an edge to their head coach, Andy Towers, a.k.a. Mr. Stone Cold Steve Austin. He doesn't need any help getting juiced up. And now he's going to look on DraftKings before the game, and he's going to see these people think we're a 2.5-point underdog. We're the biggest underdog. There's going to be plenty of juice in that locker room. And, yeah, Whip Snakes are favorites for a reason, but I don't see how this Chaos team is getting 2.5, and that's not worth a look. Hey, if you want to get real frisky, might even be worth a look on the money line if they could get it done. I'm not going that crazy. Maybe a little sprinkle. Maybe a little sprinkle. But give me the Chaos +2.5, -113. It's my best bet. And if this one hits, I'm going to put out a video of me doing the Stone Cold Steve Austin on Twitter for people to enjoy. Best bet, newbie, Chaos +2.5. There we go.
Oh, I need that one to hit now. For the Stone Cold Steve Austin, for the little bump,
for the content.
My favorite thing ever.
It's all about the content. Hashtag for the content.
I'll be rooting for that.
Final segment before we get you out of here, folks. It's time for something we call the EMO. We're going man up. We're trying to score. We're trying to get you some of that extra money opportunity. And I'll bat lead off here. Because, again, I'm going to disagree with the boys. It's what will make the show fun. My EMO, my extra money opportunity, is the Redwoods. And that juicy +185, them on the spread -1.5. I said it earlier, the Redwoods are solid top to bottom. What was the one piece they were missing was at that stripe. Second to last in the league last year, 36% on faceoffs. Horrible. So what did they do? They went out and got the guy who could potentially be one of the best guys from the stripe in professional lacrosse. It's TD Erlin. Now, he has quite the test getting off the ground and getting acclimated in game 2 for the Redwoods against Farrell. but as great as I think he will be, it should be a huge payoff for the Woods, and hopefully the same for us. My EMO this week, Doug, is Redwoods -1.5 and that juicy 185 for my first EMO of the season. What say you, brother?
All right, man. My EMO is Water Dogs -1.5 plus 175. As we talked about in this section with this game, I love what Water Dogs have done this offseason. I think they really addressed a lot of their weaknesses, and I think they're going to be coming out hot. They want to prove that they're not the rookies anymore in this league, and they have a chance against the current rookies in the Cannons, who are still going to be trying to figure things out. Water Dogs, struggled a little bit at the beginning of last season. And I think now that they've had an entire season under their belt, and they're getting the chance at the fresh meat, I think this is a really, really great spot for them. I could see them, wanting to make a statement in this game. So I'm looking at Water Dogs -1.5 at plus 175, not quite the plus 185 that you had, but it's still very solid for some plus money right there.
Hey, as long as it's plus money, it makes our extra money opportunities segment. So to recap, I'm on the Woods -1.5 plus 185. Dougie Fresh, Water Dogs -1.5, and that juicy plus 175. That's our EMOs, folks. That is a wrap for us. And we want to remind folks that starting next week, we're going to debut that Wager Woes segment. Hopefully not on either of our best bets, but we'll get to that and cross that bridge if we have to. And that's where we'll be recapping the most unfortunate bad bets of the weekend. Also, starting up, we're going to have our money line hotline bling up and running so that you can call in and give some maybe betting advice that you want to give to the listeners, or you can also just call and vent about your wager woes. Just visit the link that's in the description. And of course, check out everything we're doing at lacrosseplayground.com. If you want some more betting content beyond lacrosse, you can also check out the man, the myth, the legend, Dougie Fresh's betting newsletter. It's called The Rundown. Follow him on Twitter at Doug Greenberg. Keep your eyes peeled for my betting preview coming later this week as well. And as always, folks, smash that subscribe button, share this pod with your fellow betting friends, fellow lacrosse fans, and join us every week as we bet on lacrosse. And let's make some money. For Dougie Fresh, Doug Greenberg, I'm Dan Neubert at Newbie Talks. And for our producer as well, Hutton Jackson. Find him at Hutton Jackson. We'll talk to you next week. Let's make some money, folks.